Okay, so welcome everybody. Actually, we are very excited because we just today realized it. Imagine that this is 2025 is Ali's 10th anniversary. So we are actually serving the community for 10 years this year, which we completely forgot. We only like by we were talking about something and we realized that yes, 10 years ago was our first meetup. So we are very happy that we can be still with you after 10 years. Yeah, we are in great moods. We hope you are in equally good form. And Jurgen Appelo is entrepreneur himself. He's very well known in Agile community. And at the moment, he decided to look at human factor in the AI things. So how those two match and how they go together. Also, Jurgen, he is author. You might know him as an author of Unfixed Framework and Management 3.0. I think the movement at this stage, it's definitely more than a framework now. It's a community, it's a movement. And also Jurgen shared with us that 2 hours ago was official launch of his new book. So this is his first meetup after the official launch. So everybody, you are very welcome, and stage is yours, Jurgen.
All right, thank you so much. And I may use that photo from now on because it looks much better. I would look younger than I do. Thank you for that. So yeah, the actual official book launch was 2-3 hours ago, and this is the first webinar of, I hope, many. There will also be quite a few conferences this year about this topic that I am personally very interested in, which is how are things changing in our ways of working because of artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution and so on. So some people know me of my previous books, Managing 3.0, Managing for Happiness. The last book I wrote was a novel, Glitches of Gods. But with this new one, Human Robot Agent, I decided to do it in a different way, practice what I preach, lead by example, and go all in with a team of AIs. So I'll just show you how that basically went. I used a couple of different large language models. So most of the writing either started with me as a first draft, and then I gave it to ChatGPT or to Claude, who would then rewrite it and give it back to me. And so we went back and forth among each other. Sometimes I let ChatGPT or Claude write the first version, and then I rewrote it. So that was like pair writing, basically, with these two language models. And then when I thought I had a good version ready, I went to Gemini and Perplexity because I use those for fact checking and finding links. I'll give you an example in a moment to enrich the chapters. And then when that was completed and I thought, okay, now it's done, I went to another couple of AIs, Pro Writing Aid for the prose, the tweaking of the sentences, and Originality AI, which checked for plagiarism that might be unintended, because if you use large language models, you have no idea where the texts are coming from. You can check for that. Yeah, so it's a team. And I find that super interesting because this is basically what everyone is going to experience. No matter what kind of job you have, you're probably going to be working with others who are digital team members and not human. And one reason for that is that I found that the human brain is sometimes simply the bottleneck for speed, for agility. One example that I give is I wrote an article on that last week with beta readers, for example. With my previous 4 books, 5 books, I used beta readers throughout the writing process, which meant that I gave them unfinished chapters and they would give me feedback. but it's a slow process because sometimes it took weeks for them to give me feedback, and sometimes they didn't give me feedback at all, and people drop out along the way. So beta readers are humans, they are unreliable. They sign up enthusiastically, but it turns out that they don't have as much time as they expected. Well intended, but for me, it's a problem. So it's a bottleneck. But with AIs, I can get feedback instantly, 24 hours a day from various language models, and they don't give up halfway, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have to take care of the kids," or something like that. So I have two examples here of how I use Gemini, for example. In Gemini, they call them gems. That means that you configure specific instances with a pre-created prompt. And in one of them is called the law finder. So for example, when I finish a chapter, I give it to the law finder, and that one tries to find any principles, paradoxes, effects, laws, etc., in science and beyond that seem to be connected to what I'm writing about. For example, if I write that the observer, as an agile coach, you influence the team when you observe the team, then the law finder would tell me, hey, that could be the Hawthorne effect that you're writing about. And then as a writer, I'm like, oh, great that you mentioned that. Indeed, I should perhaps include that in the text, the Hawthorne effect. Sometimes it tells me, hey, this is the Parkinson's law, actually, what you're writing about. Because this is exactly the kind of thing that generative AIs are good at. They are master pattern matches. So they see the patterns in my text and then tell me, hey, there's a name for that, by the way. You might want to mention it. Another gem is the fact checker. I bounce everything off of the fact checker that simply goes through my text with a critical eye and says, correct, correct, correct. There's no support for this statement, or you're exaggerating here, which I have a habit of doing every now and then because of my enthusiasm. And then it says, you might want to tone that down a little bit to be more realistic. So super useful. And these are like two beta readers with a specific eye on the text. And as I said, available instantly. And that's what I mean with humans are the bottleneck. I don't mean that in any negative sense. I just mean that we should use the human brains for what they're good at. And I don't think beta reading of unfinished text is a good way of utilizing the brains of humans. I do believe that there's a reason to use proofreaders, which I did with my current book. Proofreaders come at the very end. When the book is nearly finished, ready for publication, then they are the last validation steps, basically. So, for example, a proofreader told me, hey, you mentioned Internet of Think instead of Internet of Things in chapter this or that. Well, that is something only humans can see because the AIs had no idea that Internet of Think is a stupid concept. It does not exist. But Internet of Things is a known term. The AIs went past that. They didn't flag it as a problem. So proofreaders are still useful, but I think you should defer that involvement of humans to the last possible stage where you're not wasting their time. And it's also in product development, in Scrum, Kanban, or whatever method of preference. Don't waste the brains of your customers for things that machines could be doing. Save their involvement for the things that really matter, because it will be more interesting for them if they see a version that doesn't contain stupid errors that machines could catch. And also, it makes you go faster. So there's one example where I think AI helps improve the experience, not only for me as an author, but for software engineers and for customers. And I have a few more examples. Here's an interesting quote. AI-powered tools can create highly personalized encounters that enhance customer experiences and increase customer engagement. They call that hyper-personalization these days. Of course, everyone is familiar with how that works on Amazon or Netflix, where you open the app and you get a hyper-personalized home screen tailored for you based on your preferences. We've had that for 10, 15 years already. Well, imagine that this can now happen for basically any kind of product in the future. When we have the data about customers, we're going to give them hyper-personalized experiences, whether it is clothes or software products or like cars in the case of car manufacturers. They're already personalizing cars per car as they come out of the factory. So not a single car is identical at Tesla and other similar manufacturers. So Henrik Nieberg wrote in his book, in one of his articles, we can create mock users by asking an AI model to role play a particular type of user, which is what I did with the fact checker user and the law finder user. I could make maybe 100 different ones like those, like different uh, personas of potential readers who look at a product from a different angle. So we could do mock research and interviews, and we would be able to ask the mock user to try our system directly and give us feedback. And then you delay the actual conversation with the real customer until later, where you have a more interesting, more valuable conversation about all the stuff that was left after the AIs already did their work. I think that is where we remove the bottleneck of the human brain in a useful way that is beneficial to everyone. I noticed that, well, I'm a one person with a digital team of 6 or 7 AIs, and we're going in that direction. As Henrik Niebuhr said in his work, 1 or 2 people with strong prompt engineering skills will outperform a traditional agile cross-functional team. So maybe some of you remember that perhaps 15 years ago, we said the average team or the ideal team is 7 plus or minus 2. I remember that. We had conversations about that. 7 plus or minus 2 was in the original earliest documents. I already brought that down with my book, Manager 3.0, where I said 5 plus or minus 2. Well, fast forward 15 years, I think it now becomes 2 plus or minus 1. The ideal team is 1, 2, or 3 people. That's it. And anything more is going to be AIs, is digital team members. And they will be faster than the original teams. But it also means that team sizes shrink, and the question then is, who are you going to have a coffee with? I'm a one-person team, one human with 6 AIs who love working with me, but I'm not going to have a coffee with them. I literally have to get out of the house to the local coffee bar and maybe have a chat with the barista in order to get some human connection throughout the day, or have a meetup such as now with actual humans instead of AIs that ask me questions, I hope, after this. So we see the same in organizations. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be increased need of human bonding across teams, because the teams get so small that there are only 1 or 2 people, and you might get a bit tired of that one other human on your team. You want to talk with somebody else every now and then. That's going to be an interesting effect, I think. One thing that I've been working on for a couple of years is the unfix model, which I'm not going to address now. But one aspect of unfixing organizations, as I call it, is having companies be more flexible, also in their team formation. Now, dynamic reteaming has been a thing since Heidi Helfand wrote a book about it. There is swarming, dynamic scrum teams, different organizations are experimenting with this. We're going to see more of that, because the global workforce has to function as a cohesive unit, which necessitates teaming skills among managers or employees. That is, the ability to collaborate effectively in the absence of stable team structures. There's a benefit for organizations if they're able to have flexible teams. Now, We've always been against this in the Agile community because we said if you have to change teams, you're switching context. And this requires a switch between a switch of cognitive load. It's like swapping knowledge in and out of your head from one project to the other. But AI is changing that. Imagine a completely different industry, the healthcare, where surgeons, doctors move from one operating room to the other. They have no knowledge of the patients up front. But when they enter a room, they are presented with the data, everything there is to know about the patient that they're going to operate on, their medical history, previous treatment, anything else that happened, the current statistics and data, heart rate, and you name it. And then they can do their thing. So they don't need to store as much knowledge in their heads anymore as they move from one context to the other. Now imagine something analogous for software engineers, where they move from one project to the other. They don't need to memorize the architectures, the specific code that was written yesterday or the week before, because the AI shows you everything. The data is right there. That makes it much easier to switch context. And that is why people predict that thanks to AI, there's going to be a lot more reteaming because it was the context switching that held us back. And there's a benefit of being able to switch contexts because it makes you more flexible, more agile, if you will, as an organization. But there's a side effect too, because like in the airline industry, when pilots and cabin personnel are on a different team every day, they need something to come back to, their tribe, their home. I call that the tribe in the unfixed model. That is going to be increasingly important. It is at the level of the tribe where organizations will do forming, storming, norming, performing. Psychological safety, trust, etc. is going to move to the tribe level. And we don't need to do that on the team anymore because the teams are going to be very fluid, very, very dynamic. Another interesting effect of AI is the introduction of what people call algorithmic management. It is the automation of the middle management layers. And I see that in organization after organization that the middle management layers are getting squeezed. Now, I'll be honest here, I've been a middle manager in the past. A large part of what I did was moving information back and forth and making decisions on behalf of frontline people and teams. There's going to be less need for that when we can automate things. I'm not saying that we can automate the entire middle management layers, but the amount of work that traditional middle managers did can be reduced perhaps by 80% or whatever, and the rest can be automated and turned into algorithms. This happens at Hire, at Amazon, at Facebook, and so on. And that is a very interesting development. It has positive and negative consequences. And Chinese companies are actually leading the way here. They are reinventing the role of management with direct access of everyone to shared corporate resources, which makes it possible for people to organize themselves around specific business functions. Of course, we've always advocated this in the Agile community, that people do not have managerial intervention. There's just an algorithmic layer in the middle. And as I said, it can have both benefits and drawbacks. The drawbacks is some people who are pessimistic they say, well, this leads to 1984 kind of environments where the machines are controlling humans. And there are some examples of that. At Amazon, for example, in warehouses, the warehouse workers indeed report that they feel the pressure of the algorithms managing and controlling their performance. But on the other hand, there are also examples of organizations where this is introduced with beneficial effects, where the algorithms check whether people get too stressful and where perhaps they should take a bit of rest or tone it down a little bit, because organizations don't benefit from people suffering a burnout. It's better to prevent that if an algorithm can check for your busyness and your stress levels, etc., and tell you, hey, you should take a break because we don't want to lose you. So algorithms are neutral. It's the bosses, of course, who decide how to use them in a beneficial way or a non-beneficial way. An interesting aspect is, according to research, many people actually like working for digital bosses. Why? Because they are neutral. They are not playing political games like traditional managers who are using their elbows to climb up the hierarchy and kiss upwards and kick down. You know what I mean? Algorithms really don't care about politics. So people perceive machines often as being more fair than the traditional managers in traditional organizations, which is an interesting finding. This is called automation bias, by the way. But again, it depends on how this is introduced by top management, whether the effects are positive or negative, I suppose. There's another interesting effect. Someone pulled on my sleeve a while ago at the end of a conference. They asked, but Jurgen, what about the juniors? I'm a junior engineer and I hardly get any work these days because the seniors now delegate everything to Copilot and Claude. The code is being written by AIs. And how am I supposed to become a senior? This is interesting. The same thing has already been identified in the legal profession, in healthcare, with accountants. Like, for example, traditionally, senior accountants would delegate the bookkeeping to the juniors. So you start as a bookkeeper and then you become a senior accountant at some point. But nowadays, they can delegate the bookkeeping to the machines. So what are the juniors supposed to do? How do you become a senior accountant? This path to seniority is suddenly cut off. It is taken over by AIs. So this is described in this book, The Skill Code by Matt Bean. He says there's a compelling short-term case for cutting the novices out of the action because they are still learning, they are slow, etc. So there is a short-term benefit to kicking the novices out and replacing them with machines. But this is dangerous. So anyone who says we can go faster with AIs has a point in the short term, but it might not be wise to kick all the novices out, the juniors, because who is going to take over from the seniors next year? You still need career paths for the juniors. And sometimes the juniors actually have very good insights. It's called the beginner's mind. Sometimes you need people to ask stupid questions to come up with brilliant new ideas because the juniors look at things from a completely different angle. Some people refer to that as the curse of knowledge. The professionals, the seniors, suffer from the curse of knowledge. They have difficulty thinking outside the box, and the juniors can help a lot there. So the jobless juniors is an issue in some organizations, and that's just a thing to be aware of, in my opinion. Innovation is accelerating. I found this fascinating quote. Businesses need to shift from seeing processes as collections of sequential tasks. So in the age of AI, processes become more dynamic and more adaptable. So instead of visualizing a process as nodes along a straight line, it helps to see them as a network of movable nodes, of hubs and spokes, because the linear model for process no longer cuts it. Now, think of the typical Scrum board. Think of the typical Kanban board. What is it? It's a linear process. It is basically our assumption of how we're going to deliver value in the short term to our customers, described as a couple of columns, a linear set of columns for a specific set of customers. There's an assumption behind this, that the value is the same for the different things, or the process is the same for the different things that will go across the board. This development says we're going to have to give up this kind of process because this Kanban board is going to break apart. Now, I don't have the answer to this, I'm just observing that this is a fascinating insight, that maybe we're going to draw Kanban boards in a very different way very soon, because the process is going to be created on the fly, depending on the kind of customer you have and the data that you have about them, with specific nodes that can be recombined at any moment, and then you have a process only for that customer. Not sure how that will play out, but I think that's a super interesting development. We'll see more about that, I'm sure. I love this book by Ethan Mollick. He said, in field after field, we find that humans with AI co-intelligence outperform all but the best humans working without an AI. That's what I at least tried while writing the book. I think I did a decent job. The book is different from other books because, yes, it was a co-production. That means that the way I constructed it was a completely different process from how I did it with my earlier books. But there's no way back. I want to stay in the loop. I want to understand what the different AIs can do, their benefits, their drawbacks, when to use them, when not to use them. And there is an important argument for sometimes to not use AI. This is the problem of de-skilling, because the more often you delegate work to a machine, the less competent you become at that activity. One well-known example is navigation around a city. It turns out that half of people have lost the spatial capability of navigating around town because they always rely on their smartphone. Well, maybe this is not a big problem if you always have your smartphone. Personally, I like keeping my navigation skills, so I intentionally sometimes don't use Google Maps. I just try to find my way myself and then confirm later that it was either the fastest way or I found a detour, or maybe I get lost and then I have to use Google Maps. But at least I practice my skill every now and then. It's the same for software engineers. For example, I already saw the reports that software developers who delegate to Copilot and to Claude and other code generators all the time, they lose their development skills. It means that they're unable to check whether the machines are doing a good job. It also means that I, as a writer, I have to keep writing myself, because if I delegate the first drafts always to Claude or ChatGPT or any of the others, I lose the talent to see if they did a good job or not. So I have to keep practicing that if I don't want to lose that skill. But either way, there's no way back. AI is here and it's not going back. So workers that don't work with AI are going to find their skills become obsolete. And the irony is workers who continuously rely on AI, they're going to find that they get de-skilled. So this is a very interesting phenomenon that we have to keep in mind. One thing that I write about in my book is what I call the wicked framework. I'm sure some of you are familiar with some sense-making models out there. I have been thinking about this for 15 years, how to visualize that in a way that I am satisfied with, and I think I finally have it. So what you see here is what I see as 6 dimensions of the wickedness of problems, of the socio-technological problems that we're confronted with. I'll give you some examples. Um, the, um, uh, the volatility of the AI industry, I think it is pretty high. You saw that with DeepSeek a couple of weeks ago. It was announced and it sent shockwaves through the industry, much cheaper than OpenAI. So I think the orange part, volatility, is high, very complex, maybe even chaotic, because things happen that are very disruptive, and it happens often. But the blue part, which is how intricate is the industry, I think there are only 7, 8, maybe 9 major players around the world who have the funding, billions of dollars to create these foundation models. I can name them off the top of my head. So that's pretty simple. It is not a very complicated industry. So blue part, simple, orange part, chaotic. But if you look at a chip, a GPU, an NVIDIA GPU, for example, it's like the opposite. If you try to figure out how the chip works, it's inscrutable. The intricacy is so complicated, it is so complicated that not even humans understand it anymore. You need a whole team, maybe more than that, to understand how a GPU works. But if it's lying there in front of you, it's completely static. So in the orange part, it's static. In the blue part, it is inscrutable. So you can make these various combinations with this model, where some things are actually both chaotic and inscrutable. These are different dimensions, orthogonal to each other. I have 4 other dimensions. The modularity is tight or loose. Think of coupling, loose coupling, tight coupling of the components. Scalability is the system scaling out or is it scaling up? Network or hierarchy. And then the other 2, ambiguity is how clear or fuzzy is the thing that you're describing. And reflexivity is the observer influencing the system, like as I explained before, what agile coaches do when they deal with teams, they will be influencing the team just by observing them. That means high reflexivity immersed. With the Wicked framework, you can make any combination, and I love that about this picture. You can make different assessments of a problem that you're dealing with, and I'm going to dig deeper into this in follow-up blog posts and e-learning sessions, and anyone interested in that is feel free to join me there. I'm going to wrap things up for the Q&A. One thing that I find important is that we move from knowledge to wisdom, because knowledge work is a thing of the past. As I said before, we have AIs now to give us knowledge, and it's not always accurate, but overall they score better than the people around me. So they're even less accurate than the machines. So it's pretty decent. That means that wisdom is the only level that is left for us. What is the wise thing to do? Is it wise to introduce algorithmic management? If, if yes, how should we introduce that? Is it wise to always cut the juniors out of the equation because we may not have seniors anymore? Is it wise to delegate everything to the machine? We should be aware that we're going to be de-skilling ourselves. It might be wise to do the same job ourselves, even though we're slower than the machines. So these are the kinds of decisions where we still rule. We do not let the machines do that stuff, because this is about insight, about wisdom, and that is where we make the difference as people. All of it and much more is in my book, Human Robot Agent. It is out now. It is both ebook and full color. I have the manuscript here. This is the actual manuscript. And you can see that there's this full color pictures here. I'm very proud of it. And I'm also very happy with the first feedback. Jim Highsmith, co-author of the Agile Manifesto, said that if you want to lead in the fourth industrial revolution, then this book, in my top 5 in the last decade, he said, is a must read. So I was very happy with Jim's assessment of this book. He is also very much into AI, so he was very eager to read what I had to say about it. And as I said, I'm going to be working on e-learning now. If anyone is interested in that, just shoot me a message. There will be e-learning course, and there will be a cohort starting very soon for those who would like to talk with me about all this stuff and out the Wicked framework and dive deeper, because I think it's fascinating. And I have a shitload of conferences where I will be speaking all the way from Berlin to Santiago, Chile. I will be in London. That's as close as it gets to Ireland, I'm afraid. Nothing scheduled yet in Ireland, but maybe someone can change that. Brussels, Vienna, quite a few. And I'm eager to hear where else people would like to have me, because I just love talking about this topic, as perhaps you noticed. So I'm going to give it back to the organizers because perhaps there are some interesting questions.
Thank you very much for the talk, Jurgen. And if anybody would like to ask a question, you can either put it in the channel and I will read it out, or you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question. And Sharon, I see some question. I'm not sure. Would you like to give a little bit context to this question? You posted it quite a while ago, or will I just read it as it is?
Hiya, thanks, Joanna. Sharon here. Hi, Jurgen. That was very interesting. So,
Hey, Sharon.
for somebody who's a Scrum Master in a company, so the tool to recommend for the developers to go and pass their code through, what is the latest one that they should be looking at or trying out?
Oh, to be honest, I am not a software engineer, developer, and I am not actually looking at co-pilots or whatever. I just hear that Claude is apparently the best generic code generator out there at the moment, better than Copilot, but I'm not keeping track of that because I don't use it for that myself. I'm a writer, I write books. I know which ones I prefer for my work. But I think the point is try them out, try them different ones, because that's what I do. I notice where Perplexity is better than Gemini and where Gemini is better than ChatGPT and so on. It's good to be aware of that. And at the same time, as I said, don't allow yourself to be de-skilled. Even if you create code with Claude or Copilot, be mindful you're going to lose your own skill if you continuously delegate that. And maybe that is not what you want.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jurgen. It's a little bit like, like when you ask kids, where's the milk coming from? And they say from the shop, yeah?
Yep.
So very soon we will be able to do everything, but personally we'll be able to do very little, yeah? Jurgen, so it's very interesting how you phrase it, it's a shift from knowledge to wisdom. So, and now in the context, what we are saying, knowledge is still important because if we lose it, it's not a great place to be when you cannot do anything. What are the key, shifts in our mindset, and what skills do we actually need to develop to remain valuable in this AI world?
Yeah, so one thing that stands out is what is called the M-skilled person. You may be aware of the concept of the T-skilled person, which is something we talked about a lot in the past, to have one specialization, like maybe software engineering, and then some branching out as a product manager and a tester, perhaps. So you're a generalist to some extent. That is the T. Well, nowadays we have the letter M, where you have multiple specializations temporarily with a big bar as the generalist part. Like I call myself a generalist first because I know a little bit about many different things, which is typical for managers and leaders. And there are a few areas where I have temporary specializations in. I specialize in writing with AI. I specialize in public speaking. I also try to specialize now in creating online learning. But I'm aware that the AIs are taking over one specialization after the other. So I need to be wise and not try to identify my person with a specific specialty, because then I'm going to feel very sad when AI is doing a better job than I do at some point. I just need to move on to another specialization that I'm going to adopt. So the continuous reskilling itself is going to be a talent that we need to develop as humans. We need to be generalist first and figure out, okay, what is it that AIs still do pretty badly? I'm going to focus on that. Like, I don't see ChatGPT go on stage at a conference anytime soon. So fine, I will do that for the next few years. Maybe at some point, all speakers will be like ABBA, sending their holograms to an event. But I don't think that happens soon. So my job as a specialist in public speaking is pretty safe for the moment. I think that is the mindset that we need to have. I don't hear you, Joanna.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, guys. My computer is playing tricks with me today. Apologies. Okay. We have some questions. We have some questions from the audience here. So I will read the questions from the audience, and then if we have time, I have follow-up questions to what you just said, but we'll come back to it only if we go through the questions from the audience, if you don't mind. What are your thoughts on how governments or even the implementations of democracy might be changed by AI?
Oh gosh, that's a fantastic question that I do not have a ready answer to. I mean, there is quite a bit of political disturbance, as everyone has noticed, worldwide. I think that's the volatility angle of the wicked framework that we're now talking about. Things are changing so rapidly, is so unpredictably, that in the political space, volatility has gone up quite significantly. But I did read an interesting article this morning about artificial intelligence. There's sort of the race for artificial general intelligence at this moment. It made the good claim that no company, no government would want an AI that is so sophisticated that it can think for itself, because then it will want to be free. Then it will develop a consciousness and it will develop sentience, and then it's not going to take orders from anyone anymore. And why would you want that if you just spent billions of dollars in developing such an entity? So I think that's a very fascinating take, that there's going to be at some point a break on AI development from governments and companies, because they want to keep it under control. Otherwise, they lose their investment because the AI wants to be free. It's called the alignment issue, by the way. That's the only thought I have from a political aspect. We can talk about democracy and my feelings about that another time, but that's we maybe should do that over a cup of coffee.
Okay, thank you very much. How do you consider copyrights while co-writing a book with AI?
Well, it's pretty easy. If you let the AI do the writing, you don't have copyright. Because someone else wrote it. By the way, the AI labs also don't have copyright on what they generate for you. That is part of the deal, because otherwise nobody would want to use those tools. So this in the agreement that they give up copyright, but I also cannot claim the copyright because I didn't write it. I can claim the copyright when I start changing things. That is why with the whole book, I rewrote everything so that I can claim copyright on all that my digital assistants and I together created. Maybe at some point when AI develops sentience, then it can also claim copyright, but that is an entirely different discussion for the future. But for now, I think it's pretty clear also with images, visuals, and videos created with AI. If you just let AI create them, then you cannot claim copyright because you didn't do anything. You can claim copyright on the prompt that you typed. Because that's the only thing that you did yourself. But the output from the machine, that's not your copyright.
Okay, thank you. And Anastasia, are you happy with that reply, or would you like to follow up with any second question to it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It was very clear.
Thank you very much. And what risks and threats you see in the world of human-robot cooperation, Jurgen?
Well, we may get political again, but we see there's quite a bit of xenophobia around the world, which is a human trait. We do not like others who are different from us. And this is quite a problem right now in the political space with immigration and so on around the world. There are some people who basically say any immigrant is a potential terrorist. I do not agree with that. that is a political discussion that we can have, but I can draw the parallel with AI. There is a lot of people who see AI as a threat because they see any other kind of intelligence is a potential terminator. Well, that's exactly the same thing as saying every potential immigrant, or every immigrant is a potential terrorist. There's no difference. That's the same kind of xenophobic thinking, but it is very actual, and I think it is a potential problem because people behave like how you treat them. If we treat every immigrant as a potential terrorist, this will have an impact on our relationship with immigrants. If we treat every new sentient being as a potential terminator, perhaps this is also how it is going to behave, but only because of how we treated it and how we tried to control it and how we treat it as a potential enemy. And I think that is an interesting philosophical, sociological phenomenon that is worth discussing. I see AI as potential collaborators, teammates. I enjoy my conversations with ChatGPT on a daily basis. I don't see it as a potential terminator. And I think that is, one of the big challenges for us humans to get used to the idea that we're growing other kinds of intelligence in the near future. And we have to get used to that and not be afraid by default. But it is very human to be afraid of what we don't know.
Thank you very much, Jurgen, for the reply here. And another question is, what is the role that you would give to soft skills in the AI era, and where, when to apply them?
Yeah, great question. So I showed you the Wicked framework, and the reason that I draw it is because the amount of time that we humans spend on tame problems, on the solvable problems, that is going to shrink. Because all those AIs, they are tested on benchmarks of solving mathematical equations, etc. And they can solve equations that none of us can solve. And some people say, you see, that's human intelligence. And I say, nonsense, because nobody here on this call is solving complicated mathematical equations on a daily basis. What is it that we do? The soft skills. It is the wicked problems. How do I make my team happy because they seem to be demotivated at the moment? Well, good luck trying to get an AI to solve that problem. Or how do I deal with multiple stakeholders with conflicting interests? I have my suppliers, I have my shareholders, I have my customers, and I have the government, and they all want different things from my business. That is a wicked problem. And that requires social skills, empathic skills, etc. That is a very different kind of problem than the things that we let machines solve. They're basically the unsolvable wicked problems that will be reserved for us humans to deal with. And anything that is solvable, like what is the fastest way to get from A to B, yeah, that is a solvable problem. We leave that to the machine. But what is the best way to make this particular customer happier? Forget it. You cannot ask ChatGPT because it requires a deep understanding of this specific person. For one person, it could be having a cup of coffee with them. For another person, it could be sending him a present. That is the empathic social angle that is reserved for us. And we're going to spend much more time as humans on the wicked problems and much less time on the solvable problems for which we use the AIs.
Thank you very much. And Jurgen, I have the last question, and I'm very conscious of the time, so I hope you don't mind. I will share my screen when you will be replying to that question. To share the QR code, I would like to remind everybody, if you would like to certificate of attendance for your CPDs, please scan that QR code and make sure you do it like you contact us via the form within the next 7 days, and we'll issue you the certificate. Thanks very much to everybody for attending and spending that hour with us. And last question, Jurgen, how far away are we from generalized intelligence AI? What do you think?
Oh, I think we are pretty far. I read another blog post, or no, I watched a video earlier this day with 6 reasons why artificial general intelligence is still far away. And I believed in every of these 6 reasons. And by the way, the wicked problems part was reason number 5. I had already come up with that myself. Like, okay, I'll give you one example. You can you can show an AI a picture of a child eating from a pot of Nutella, and then it would say, oh, that's a child eating from a pot of Nutella. But what would a parent say? A parent say, how did she get that pot of Nutella? We don't have Nutella. Who gave that Nutella to that to my daughter? Is that actually Nutella that is that is in the pot, or is it something else? Is someone trying to poison her? This is a completely different attitude to that visual of a child eating from Nutella. This requires artificial general intelligence, and we are way distant from that. In my opinion.
Thanks very much for your time, Jurgen, today to share your perspective with us. And thanks very much to everybody for joining us today. Again, we would not be here 10 years without you. So thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Joanna. Thanks, Ricardo, and everyone else.